The purpose of the seller's interview or the seller interview is so that you can have 100% clarity, or as much clarity as you possibly can, on the core motivation for the seller when it comes time to selling and the purpose behind them selling. Now, at the end of the day, I believe there's really only two fundamental reasons why somebody would want to sell real estate. The number one reason is they are funding another need. The number two reason is it's become inconvenient for them to maintain the property. That inconvenience might be a mechanical, practical thing, or it might be a financial thing. They just can't afford to do it. If these two issues are not in play, then why wouldn't you keep the real estate, turn it into a rental property, and continue to make money off of it? Real estate's a really decent investment, and I think people do really well with that. So if you don't need the money for something else and you don't mind maintaining it, keep it. All right, so if those are two core reasons, we really need to drill down into this. Let's start with number one, funding another need. So in many cases, you're going to be dealing with someone who's selling a property to buy another property. And so their need for funding, another need, is find a replacement property. This is important because many times people are selling their current property and they want to purchase another property, but they might not net enough money out of the sale of the proceeds of their current home to achieve whatever that dream property is or the replacement property. Now, if you're not aware of this going into this listing presentation, you're going to need to figure that out because you might find yourself in a situation where your seller doesn't want to price the home in alignment with the market, and as a result, you're not going to be able to sell the house. And so your job isn't to take listings and not get paid. Your job is actually to help people transition into their new home. So if you've identified that this next funding need is going to be not 100% satisfied by the proceeds of the sale of the house, then you need to gently have a conversation about that and reassess and identify what this person's motivation really is. When finding the replacement property, is it are they realistic? You know, they might be a realistic seller, but maybe they're an unrealistic buyer. And so being able to identify these core reasons is very, very important. I also want to probably introduce at this time, hey, had you ever considered taking your property and turning it into an investment property? So this opinion varies greatly out there in the marketplace. Some agents would never bring this up. Here's why I bring it up. I want to see, is this person secretly thinking about, well, if my property doesn't sell, I'm just going to turn it into a rental property. If they're holding back some kind of thought like that, and I'm not aware of it at the point of my listing, I should know about it because maybe they're not going to be a realistic seller. Maybe they're already setting themselves up for plan B, and I'm not going to be a part of plan B. And so I need to kind of identify this. I would walk them through some simple questions. Have you ever been a landlord? Have you ever managed property? Are you familiar with some of the new government regulations that are coming out with regard to collecting rents and eviction? Is that something that you've done in the past? Do you feel like that's something that would occupy much of your time? Are you comfortable getting a call at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because something is happening with your rental property? Now, I'm not doing this to inflict fear, but if you've never been a landlord, you have never had tenants before, you might want to help share that experience with the person that you're dealing with because there are some complications. Are there benefits to it? Absolutely. Is there a cost benefit? Yes, there is. You're going to have to be a landlord. Another thing I covered during the seller interview is my communication style. And so I'll ask a real direct question. Mr. Seller, what type of communication style do you prefer? Do you want to have weekly updates or do you want to have more event-based communication? So, something changes and I'll communicate that. Something changes and I communicate that. So typically, even if someone says I prefer event-based communication, I still try to touch them on a regular basis. And here's why. There's two main reasons why clients become disenfranchised with their realtor. Number one is they feel like they're confused or they don't know what's going on in the process. And then number two is, gosh, my realtor just never calls me back. Okay. So it's really important that you kind of put that out in your presentation at the beginning. What type of communication style do you prefer? I'm a very busy listing agent and I'm kind of doing lots of things at one time. And if a few days go by and the seller doesn't hear from me, are they going to be upset? Are they going to be concerned? You know, when someone's selling their house, sometimes they're at a heightened emotional state. This can create some additional communication challenges for us, and I just want to make sure that I'm putting it on the table out there. Give it a shot. You'll find that it really is a good idea. All right, next thing. What is your time frame for moving? What's your time frame for moving? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to really make sure I can nail down what the core motivation is. I'm trying to back fit into dates and back fit into calendar for core motivation. So it gets really complicated if you're having this conversation with a seller and they say, well, you know, I just want to put my house on the market, and if it sells, it sells. And if not, well, that's okay too. I just want to see what happens. So baloney, don't let that hang out there in la la land. Make sure you drill down into asking the simple questions about what is the core reason for you doing this? Why are you doing this? And if you can't establish a time frame and a timeline, it's going to be really difficult for you to quote unquote project manage. You're going to project manage this transition from one property to another property. There's lots of moving parts there, and if you can't establish a reasonable time frame with some performance standards in it, then you're going to have to really drill down into the true intention of the seller a little bit better. So do they have enough emotional motivation to get over the finish line? You're going to have to be inconveniencing to them on a few additional levels. They're going to have to pack. They're going to have to move. We're going to have to stage your house. We're going to have better photography. We're going to have open houses. We're going to have what I call a grand opening event where I introduce your property to the market. I'm going to have agents and brokers walking through your home. It's going to be disruptive. So I need to make sure this person's emotionally tied into the outcome of what's going on here. Another thing I want to bring up during the seller interview is I want to ask them, are you talking to any other brokerages, right? Are you talking to any other brokerages or any other agents when it comes to selling your home? Again, there's varying opinions on this, but I want to get that on the table. Some agents do not want to bring this up because, gosh, I don't want to highlight any information from any other brokerage. I only want to, talk about what I'm doing. That's fine, but the problem is what if they already know somebody in the business, and you don't want to come out and just, launch some sort of attack against someone's friend or family member because they happen to have a real estate license. It's much easier to kind of quantify and quantify the brokerage that person's works within, so that you don't have to personalize it. And what this is it just feels much more professional. Are you talking to anyone else when it comes to listing your property? Oh, great, so and so works for such and such brokerage. I'm sure they're a fine agent, but there's a lot of differences in brokerages and how those brokerages operate, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And this is our transition statement as we go into our next section, which is the differences between agents and agencies. Please hit that subscribe button, and don't forget, visit our website and schedule your free 30-minute evaluation.